talked about it in terms of that elevator pitch and the positioning statement. It's so critical to really understand who the audience is for the book. It's not for every audience, like it's for your aunt or it's for your uncle. Which one is it? Just in a very simplistic way, and there certainly are some books that have really broad readership, but at the very beginning, like understanding who your core audience is and who you're going after and positioning it as such is really important.
And I think that's one of the pivotal changes over the last 15 or 20 years in the industry was when I was selling Christine, it was very much about trying to convince her why Borders needed to take a big position so that they would drive the demand for the book. And that's what has really switched. I mean, the impetus is on us as the publishers to drive demand for the book. The accounts expect us to show them how we're going to get people into stores. And that's why, if you're wondering like why we're asking for jackets so early, or the manuscript has to be in Swinging Cake Galleys, or even for me, I mean, we get asked for plans sometimes much earlier than we're really ready to commit. It's because the sales reps are out there wanting to put their best foot forward in this fleeting moment that they have to do that.
I want to echo what Kelly said. Don't hide from the story behind the book, right? And I try and, what I tell my publishers all the time is it's a story. You want to tell them a good story. So if the hardcover didn't work, then you got to give them a reason why the trade's going to work. And coming back with the exact same package, the exact same marketing plan, a year later, that's not a good story. And we're all storytellers, so we got to figure out how to do that.
So the next question that we had was about collaboration. And I also think there's been a shift even in the last couple of years where I think on the marketing side, we were very heavily focused on giving the sales reps information about what we were doing to reach consumers directly, and all of our efforts were focused on advertising or assets or book club kits or their social platforms. There seems to be a lot more opportunity now for marketing to work directly with accounts. Fun and exciting that we can create really wonderful visual displays that attract attention in stores, or to even partner with our accounts on putting kits together that when we're doing influencer outreach to big mouths on TikTok or Bookstagram, there are people in accounts or in libraries or in stores who are also influencers and who we can reach with our efforts. So there's a lot more room now for sales and marketing to collaborate. And when Gary and I worked at SNS together, SNS was really great about partnering with marketing so that our marketing efforts were timed with exactly when sales thought the biggest opportunity was, so that we could collaborate and make sure we were maximizing our efforts to get distribution and drive the consumers into stores. So I'd love to know, I'm going to start with Kelly, what are some of the examples you've seen of collaboration recently, and how do sales and marketing and publishing and the author all work together to drive distribution?
Yeah, I love this question, and I'll back out for a second to have it be a little bit more about the sales and publishing relationship, which I would emphasize is really more of an ongoing, constant collaboration. It's not just showing up to sales conference 2 or 3 times a year, but we're really engaged in a daily collaboration with our publishing partners on the editorial side, publishing office side, certainly on the marketing and publicity side, and that's because we are the eyes and ears of the market. We get feedback from accounts that are super high tech and super grassroots, and they represent the entire buying audience. So we get that all the time, and we're feeding that back to publishers at every point in the book's life cycle, even after it's already on sale. So we're not really limited to just a few touch points. So it can be a little bit difficult then to zoom in on one area of collaboration. And I know that I'm sure all of my fellow panelists have a lot of great examples. But I think I would just say to know that your salespeople are involved in every decision. We're involved in acquisitions. We weigh in on the sales potential. Our editors obviously have a ton of autonomy, but we speak to the book's potential for readers. We help them find prospects, especially in this new world of self-publishing. We weigh in on positioning from format to title to cover. A lot of times you'll hear our on-sale dates are optimized for our accounts. We certainly do work with marketing on the timing of announcements. We really focus on pre-orders and optimizing pre-orders through that. And then just using all of the insights from our customers to reach the right audience. And that can be in a million different ways. So it's hard to know where exactly to begin. Trade shows. We have a whole new retail marketing department at HarperCollins where we're partnering with accounts on their own marketing efforts to emphasize and amplify everything that we do. So I'm sure we can come up with a couple examples.
We were lucky enough for the past several years to have Colleen Hoover break out. It's really exciting when that happens. But you get people to lean in a little more. E&N actually was great to partners with us in the sense that, typically, you could do window displays in New York. but we actually created oversized book jackets that were 3D, and they put them in every store across the country. And then we, gave them window decals, and we had store contests. If something's big enough, an account leans in a different way typically. And I know it's not just the big authors, but it makes it easier then, and then when they see success there, you can try and amplify it and do it with other people.
And then they told us, we want you to use S&S's vendor to create the same window boxes for your books too. So it works.
I mean, I think, again, there are so many different ways for us to market directly with our accounts. And the point that Kristen made, that what our retail partners are looking for now is true partnership, and the onus is on the publishing community to drive traffic into stores. Whether it's creating exclusive product or maybe a gift with purchase that is driving customers directly into stores. How are we having our authors amplify social media efforts that the accounts are working on? Or our authors getting out? There's still that traditional aspect of sending our authors out into the stores. And whether it's to do a social media post from a store or to have an official book signing or just to make that one-on-one connection with their local bookseller, that's also something that's really important.
And I'll just say, one of the things I love about my job is how collaborative it is with marketing and with publicity. I meet all the time with them to see how we can optimize where the books are going and how we can drive traffic into their stores. I think, from a kids space, we spend a lot of time talking about how we're going to bring in those readers, how we're going to get them excited about and invested in a series. Our accounts have all different needs, so sort of being able to be involved a little bit in the creative of being how do we create this moment for this account, but then do something different for this one, but still reach that audience and get those kids excited about the books. And I think, it can be different for every book. We don't do massive campaigns for every book. And we talked a little bit earlier about the sell-in piece of it. That's also why we ask for stuff early, because if you can get sort of that groundswell of you're getting people reading it, you're getting people excited about it, and then you have that time to sort of plan out this way to get it out into the world and into the hands of readers.
And you may not know your salespeople, you may not see your salespeople, but your salespeople are out there advocating for you and your books. Even today, I saw in a call report, one of our reps pointed out that he thought that this book he had just sold in was a huge opportunity, and he did not feel that the account was recognizing the opportunity, but he wanted us to make sure we were recognizing the opportunity. So I made a note, and we're going to go back and we're going to do more for that book to help him get where he thinks it needs to be. So a lot of that may be invisible to all of you, but the sales reps are out there because, as I said, it's a transactional relationship. They want to get the biggest buy, they have sales targets they want to hit, and they want to come to us and tell us how we can help support their efforts.
There's just one other thing on that. I think is a best practice. Jen talked about doing things in advance. I think the longer the runway we can give to the accounts to partner with us on whether it's reveals or sweepstakes, things like that. So the earlier that we can set that up, because every publisher wants to get a foot in the door and have that opportunity to partner with a retailer. So they have a lot to juggle, and they get to pick and choose. And so I think as a publishing community, with sales and marketing and partnership, the earlier we can work with the retailer to lock in that opportunity.
And reads too. Imagine how many early reads these accounts are getting. So that's why we all put so much pressure on you to get the books in early, because we want to give the buyers and the people on the floor enough time to read the books so that they can get out there and do the sales to the consumer justice. So the next question is about challenges, and there are so many challenges, and I think a lot of that was discussed today. Certainly, on the marketing side, I think we really struggle with trying to prove that any one specific thing that we do or can do has a measurable, appreciable impact on sales. And that's something that, we think about all the time and that we're grappling with and trying to figure out how to be more nimble and proactive about. Gary, what are the challenges now facing the sales force?
So, first of all, I want to say that the retail marketplace today is vibrant, alive, and well. Okay, book sales are really clicking on all cylinders right now across the board, and I'm glad to see that. But I would say that the market is more fractured, and our customers are less flexible than they've ever been. And when I say more fractured is when we used to go to market, a long time, 25 years ago, everybody could go out of the same catalog, and your story to the accounts was the same. What you're hearing from all of our little echoes here is what's going to work at Costco is not going to work at Walmart. What's going to work at Walmart has to be a little different. So the story we have to tell to sell the books are different. Everybody has a little different opinion about how that's going to work. a large national chain thinks, only large national chain in the United States, they believe that, certain books only will work in trade. So, they do hardcovers of certain books. We have another customer that they set their schedules a little further in advance, and they don't plan for opportunities. So you go to sell to them, and you're like, oh, I know I presented this to you, and you said take another look once it hit the top 100, and they're like, hey, we can make a place in August, or maybe September, and it's now, you're like April, like, is it still gonna be working in August? I don't know. And then you have another customer who, you gotta look at things from their perspective. Right now, minimum wage costs are through the roof, and you have customers who look at that and say, you know what? I'm not going to be able to merchandise all your books day one. I'm going to have a certain section of my store that's going to just get merchandised every 6 or 8 weeks. So, there's things that we have to balance, and we're trying to juggle all this feedback and get this complex information to you to make the best decision for the book. And that's the hard part, is we work for the publisher. We want to do the best thing for our author and our book, and what the customer wants might not be the exact best thing for that book, so sometimes we got to juggle that. It's really complex in today's world.
Actually, I'm going to go off script because I have a question that I want to ask all of you. We've talked a lot about the long runway and the need for a lot of setup, and that is all true, but the flip of it is also in today's marketplace, as Gary touched on, there's so much more of a long tail now than there was before. So how can we support your efforts better in that? Like, we need the big setup, we need everything out of the gate, but what can we do to help you go back to that account later and make the case that now's the time to revisit this?
Extended author engagement.
It's a little bit of everything. It's being flexible, right? Again, I keep on going back to storytelling because that's the business we're in. But it depends on the title you're talking about, Kristen. Every title will have a different story depending on what retailer I'm trying to work in. And sometimes you'll get them to pay attention, and sometimes you won't. But getting, constant feedback of, what the publicity plans are, how the all concerns going, what media you're able to generate, what the post brought. Our accounts are very savvy. They're watching the Amazon Top 100 quicker, more than we are. They're watching BookScan more than we are. They're the first ones to call to say something's wrong. Or, hey, did you see this TikTok video of your author's book? We have a good network of people that can help us get there.
I would say TikTok is a good example. I think there were some accounts that jumped on it right away because they saw such an increase in, it kind of started in YA fantasy. They took advantage of it right away, and then there were some that were very slow to come to it. They're taking advantage of it now. But it did take a while to kind of, again, it was constant conversations between the sales rep and management with the account just being like, hey, this is something here. Like, you should be taking advantage of this.
What other challenges?
I think our challenges are an extension of your challenges in marketing. If you are not sure of what the hit maker is, then we struggle to communicate that to customers. I think we struggle with it in this, I would say, more democratized publishing landscape where discovery can come from so many new places. So we're not as able to say with confidence, this is going to be the thing that moves the needle. We have to be ready for it to move the needle. We have to be nimble. We have to have our operations in order to respond when that happens, when, Dua Lipa is spotted carrying a book and suddenly we have a reorder for 5,000 copies. So the challenges are different, and it's positioning those new opportunities in a way that communicates them to the customers while also being prepared to respond when something totally unexpected comes along.
I think I'm going to try to stitch together and encapsulate the challenges because I hadn't thought of it until Gary touched on it. But to echo what Gary said, the market is very robust now, and there are people out there shopping, and there are people looking for books. And I think the perception that that's not the case may be because, as Gary mentions, it's just not as easy as it used to be. You can't go out with one account and with one catalog and one bag and one pitch and one presentation and sell the whole list. You have to be constantly flexible. You have to be revisiting everything all the time. You have to be taking a completely different approach to different accounts with different timing, with different assets. And so it seems like maybe people are not as interested and excited about books, but it's just that we need to personalize to our accounts, the same way that marketing has been challenged to provide a personalized experience to shoppers. So that might be the biggest challenge of all that we're trying to grapple with here. We spend a lot of time on the marketing side looking at data. We look at clicks to ads. We look at engagement on social posts. But truth be told, the real metric of success is how well the book performed. And that is a lagging indicator, right? I mean, after our campaign is over, a year later, we look to see how the book did, and we see, did it exceed our financial goals? Did it exceed the distribution goals that we set for it? Sales is really the place that has the access to the most meaningful and impactful data that we have in publishing. What's selling, when, and where. So Christine, how have you been using data effectively? What do you find the biggest takeaways?
Well, I know one of the things you wanted me to talk about a little bit was POS. So, I would say that POS is an invaluable, if infallible tool, or fallible tool, I should say. It is, so much of what we do in this business, we spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror, and that includes, our accounts that look at POS, historical POS on comps, expecting that is an indicator for the success of a future publication. So when we look at POS, we look at it over the life cycle of a book, from the point of acquisition, where we're looking at historical comps and recent sales history of books in the market to inform our sales assumptions for a book. Before a book goes on sale, it's about using comps and how do we talk about comps to our accounts, because they're going to be looking at that, and it's really critical. So again, you'll hear a lot of information from the sales team about the relevancy of the comps that we're using and how recent are they, and are they an indicator of what we would expect to see in the market today and in the future. We also look at POS as truly like the canary in the coal mine. So when a book is hitting the marketplace, how are consumers responding? There's a bit of a disconnect between we shipped a lot, this book is a huge success, versus what are the sales at the register telling us? Sometimes you can use POS to see something that maybe went out at a very small level, but it's just percolating, and that's an opportunity to reinvest, to try to expand your distribution on a book. We look at POS to make decisions about maybe we should delay a trade paperback. Maybe we want to keep this out in hardcover for a while because it's working across multiple channels. Or maybe it's a book that's done really, really well in a handful of channels, but the paperback moment is the opportunity to really break it out. And we can use POS and POS comps to help, expand distribution on books. And then we also look at it as backlists. POS is really valuable as a predictive indicator of what consumers are going to be looking for at a given moment in time. And so it gives us an opportunity to bring backlist in at the same time every year based on what consumers are going to be looking for. We can use it as a way to expand the distribution of backlist. Maybe it's done really well on this set of accounts for 2 years in a row at this moment in time, and we can use that to go to more accounts and say, you should be in this business. Consumers are going to be coming to this. They show this every single year based on their behavior around this book. The thing I say about POS being like an imperfect tool is that there are a lot of other sources of data that we can and should be using. So looking at consumer studies, what is it about a particular brand author, for example, that is really resonating? Is it the author's name? Is it the series name? There are a lot of ways for us to look at consumer data in terms of how we position books to readers and how we market. And then I think the other big piece is just basic things like consumer indicators and things that maybe consumers are doing outside the book business. So pickleball, we've talked about this, when pickleball was starting to take off. I pushed really hard at Harper, let's get some pickleball books for the pickleball gift market out there. And we had some account resistance in the early days, but it was showing how that sport was growing, and that was what the reps would use every time they would go in. If they were getting resistance in one place, the next sales call they would say, look, it was 19 million 3 months ago, now it's 65 million, now it's, it was showing sort of the trajectory of what consumers were doing, and that was a way to also convince accounts to support a book that maybe in the beginning there wasn't support for.
What about on the kids side? Because I feel like you have some more of a level of predictability because you have a new crop of kindergartners, sixth graders, high schoolers every year.
I mean, kids is predominantly a backlist business. There are, favorites that everybody buys when someone has a baby, or there's the nostalgia factor of, I had this as a kid and it's still in print, Harold the Purple Crayon and Brown Bear. But we do use POS, particularly from a supply chain issue of, again, there's peaks and valleys to certain titles. There is seasonality to a lot of kids' books. There's a lot of, Christmas, Hanukkah, Halloween, etc. So, using that as a predictor because again, children's books have to be printed a year before the holiday. We use that as a predictor of what we will need come that holiday season. So it's incredibly important for our accounts so that we have stock for them when they come in for it. It's incredibly important for our supply chain so that they know when to plan a reprint so that we're not out of stock. So it's incredibly helpful.
So Gary, you talked a lot about storytelling. So how does data help with the storytelling?
So data is just one aspect of the story. Data is fallible to a degree. The assumption our accounts have, selling Stephen King is that the last Stephen King they bought is going to be sold in the exact same number of stores to the exact same people as sold it last time. So it doesn't give you an opportunity to upsell, downsell, short story collection versus not. So it's nuanced. So I think data is just one aspect you got to build into your overall story about, why a book can work, or why a category can work with a certain customer. And again, to me, everything's customer specific because everybody plays ball a little bit differently in our world. And, what might work at Amazon is not the same that I'll use for Walmart to get along.
And Kelly, what about at Harvard? I mean, you have the best repository of Thailand. So how do you guys, which I still miss, how do you guys use data?
So I have a boring answer and then I have a sexier answer. So the first thing, just to Gary's point about telling the story, one thing that seems to be increasingly consistent across our accounts is a focus on efficiency. And this is where POS is incredibly important, where in the past I think we would talk about we're shipping, the initials. Accounts want to know about sell-through. They're looking at maybe 8 weeks, in some cases maybe 2 weeks in other cases. So if that's a data point that agents, authors, editors in the room will start to hear increasingly about. We're looking at POS that way because accounts are looking at it that way.
Kristen, one other thing I would say is that data can be really useful to debunk beliefs. So I'll give a great example, and this is a few years old, but when cookbooks were really dependent on the Food Network and traditional morning shows to sell the books, and the platforms changed, and it was more about authors with social platforms, there was a belief in the industry, on the account side, and I would say even within the sales community, that meant that the sales were going to go to Amazon, that it wasn't for bricks and mortar retail. So there was a sales conference, I put a case study together where we looked at some of the biggest platform authors in the cooking space and really looked at where was that market share. And we were able to show that there were certain authors, I'll say Smitten Kitchen really over-indexed in the indies, and Oshi Glow's really over-indexed to Target. And it was a way to show that everybody had an opportunity to play in this space if they were in it. The only way that you weren't going to sell it is if you weren't in the game to start with. And so the reps were able to take those case studies into the accounts, and it really opened doors for emerging platform authors like Skinny Taste or Chrissy Teigen to show that just because their platform is online and it's social doesn't mean that there isn't a brick and mortar play. And I think our retailers all understand that now, but at the time we needed that data to help sort of people see the possibilities.
I think TikTok has been a great equalizer there too, because I feel like we've all spent a lot of years trying to argue that all of our efforts in the digital space does drive demand into stores, but you really see it with the TikTok books. I mean, people are seeing those books on their phone, but they're buying it at our retail accounts.
One other comment on data. I think we have to be careful not to overgeneralize. We've all been sitting at a customer and the customer would say, you know what, vampire books are hot. And you gotta just publish more and more of them. Or romance is all trade paperback now. And you typically go, okay, you back out Colleen Hoover right now, is trade paperback all romance? Or is there still space for other books? Or if you back out Twilight, oh yeah, it's just doing okay. So I think accounts use category killers in such a way and they overgeneralize. We just gotta be careful of that and not buy into it ourselves.
I think context is really important, and we see that a lot too. I mean, we famously got this big, we have a big graphic novel fund, and we got this big report about literary graphic novels, but it was one specific literary graphic novel from HarperCollins that was driving everything, and not literary graphic novels in general. So you just have to dig into the data, and you have to be willing to be challenged by the data. I have an example recently where I have always been an opponent of pre-order advertising campaigns because I believe that advertising is most effective when people can buy the book immediately. Well, we've seen a lot of success recently with pre-order advertising campaigns with authors who have very small platforms. So you need to be open to challenging yourself and challenging your assumptions. And I think we need to work with the accounts on that too, right? They can be ingrained in their own assumptions as well. It's not always the best use of the author's time. And to what I said earlier, it goes back to what I said. We don't want to pressure authors into doing things that are not worth their time. And when we hold back on author tours, it's really about trying to use that author's time and energy most effectively. It's been hard getting people out. I mean, even for the celebrities, it's been really hard getting people out. I think that the habit of reading increased, the habit of going out to events kind of got broken. It has not necessarily come back. So I think, like with other things, we're just trying to make the best decisions, make educated decisions based on experience, and also just be respectful of what we're asking our authors to do.
I will say for certain authors, though, events are still a key part of the strategy, especially for smaller authors or local publications where you can really engage with the community. We've seen events really bounce back at HarperCollins. We went through the Zoom events as everyone else did, but we're kind of back to pre-COVID levels. And Kristen, you're totally right. It's a huge investment of time and money. It's expensive to travel authors. It's not right for everyone, especially if you have a following of 1 million people on Twitter and you can just do that. But we have literary authors who are not on Twitter. We have places where we want to really do a grassroots campaign, and most of our events are through the indies, and they are a huge supporter of authors that we want to grow. So it's not for every book, but it is certainly for many books, and it's also really impactful to our book-selling partners in the indies. So we have to find the right opportunity. It's something we still really support.
I want to echo what Kelly said, is author events are really important if the author wants to be there too, right? I mean, I'd like to state the obvious, I get it, but we've all had an author go to an author event that didn't go very well. So you got to have the right personality for it, and it's just a different way to connect with your audience, and that's what it's about. Some people it's better just to connect on TikTok, and some people it's just better to stream. I wish we could sell book streaming, because that would actually, the challenge with streaming that we learned in COVID is that it always didn't sell a book. So, but connecting with the author is what the reader wants to do ultimately. So there's value there. We just have to have the right book and the right author and the right combination.